Hi, I'm Greg from Cutting Edge Stencils, and today I want to talk to you about paint seepage or paint bleed while stenciling. And the first thing I want to say about it is it's part of the process. You're gonna get some paint bleed, some seepage around the back of the stencil that'll give you a less than perfect edge. Don't obsess over it, don't worry about it. But what we will do today is talk about some techniques that will reduce the amount of paint seepage or bleed to give you the best result possible. Let's go. So let's talk about the key points to reducing bleed while stenciling. The first one would be the condition of your walls. If you want a nice, crisp, sharp line while stenciling, your wall has to be smooth. So check your preparation of your wall. If you're doing your base coating, make sure it's smooth. If you have someone else prepping it for you, make sure the wall is smooth. This way you're gonna get a nice, tight, crisp line. If you have a texture finish on your walls, I would select a stencil that would be more forgiving. That would be something organic with leaf shapes or scroll shapes. This way, if you get a little bleed, you're not gonna see it anyway. It's about getting the design and the pattern on the walls. Okay, second thing is the proper paint sheens and the proper paints. You really want to stencil on a flat wall. A flat sheen has a certain porosity. It's going to absorb your stencil paint quicker and it's going to dry quicker, therefore not allowing the paint to bleed underneath the stencil to give you that line, that uncrisp line. So I would recommend that you use a flat paint on the wall, and I'd also recommend that you stencil with a flat paint such as Ben More Ben, great paint, or Folk Art acrylics, they're dynamite. They have a flat sheen, they flash off or they dry very quickly, and they're gonna stay where you put them. When you stencil with semi-gloss or gloss paints, they have extenders in them and they're designed to dry slower. The problem with that is that means that the paint has more time to drift and to seep underneath the stencil. So just know that going into it. You're gonna do a tone on tone or a sheen on sheen technique. You're gonna have a lot more possibility of bleed as you raise the sheen up from flat to gloss. Okay, the contrast of colors is another big thing. If you have a white wall and you want to stencil it in black, chances are you're going to see more bleed, more inconsistency in your stenciling project. If you go tone on tone, beige on a slightly darker beige, you'll barely see anything. It's a less dramatic look, but maybe appropriate for your decor. Okay, the last thing is proper load on the brush or roller. Biggest mistake made in stenciling is people put too much paint on their rollers or their brushes. You need to have a dry roller or a dry brush. And when I say dry, I mean offloaded. You load your roller, you offload it onto paper towels. You don't want a dripping roller. You hit that on the wall, the paint's got to go somewhere. Guess where it's going? It's going behind the stencil and it's going to mess everything up. I'm going to show you later in the video how to properly load your roller or brush. So I just want to recap these key points. The first one is to have a smooth wall. It's going to give you the best result. Second one is to have a flat base coat and use a flat stencil paint, and it can be an acrylic paint. That's going to give you the sharpest line, the best result as well. The next thing is contrast of colors. If you reduce the contrast of colors and do beige on darker beige, you're going to get the best result. And the last thing is proper load on your brush or roller. Not too much paint. Offloaded properly, you're going to build up your paint coverage, you're going to get the best result. This is how you do it. Okay, we've got our stencil on the wall, and there are areas where the stencil sits a little bit off the wall, but I'm going to show you why that doesn't matter. Okay, for this demo, we're using Benjamin Moore's Ben paint, flat paint, love it. Emerald green color, $5.94, looks like. High contrast, flat on flat base coat. We've got our dense foam roller. This is really what we recommend you use. We've got our paint. So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna load our roller evenly. So you can see, I'm not just running the roller through the paint, I'm actually building it up nice and evenly on the roller. Now, here is the key, right here. The offload of the roller on the paper towels. So you load your roller, you go to your paper towels, and you offload the excess. A couple passes, now you've got a nice, relatively dry looking roller. This is where you want to be. If you have too much paint on your roller, it's going to bleed. Even where the stencil sits a little bit off the wall, the roller will push the stencil in place, so don't worry about it. So we're going to start rolling, and you can see the paint goes on the stencil first, then it goes in the holes second. Don't worry about that. It's the way it's supposed to be. Don't push too hard, you'll push paint underneath the edge of the stencil and get your bleed. And you can see I'm building it up slowly. Stencil is sitting slightly off the wall, roller pushes it right down. Don't worry about it. I think what we'll do is we'll just take a peek, do a little reveal here, and see what we've got. Okay. You can see, very nice, tight, a very little bit of bleed. Again, it's part of the stenciling. You're not going to see it from 2 feet away. It looks great. I'll show you how to do it with a brush. A brush is going to give you a better result, although it's going to take you a year to do the wall. That's why we really recommend that you use these dense foam rollers. We've got our stencil brush here. Again, when you load your stencil brush, just put it on the tip. Put it on the tip of the brush. Swirling motion works very well. Then swirl it and remove excess on your paper towel. This way, you're not flooding the stencil with paint. Come up and straight in. You can pounce. You'll get a very tight line. You can also lightly swirl. Not a lot of pressure. Lightly swirl the paint. And you can get a very tight stencil print. Now I can use my brush, tweak up some light areas here. Sometimes you may need your fingers to hold the stencil in place if you're working around a door jamb or a door molding. But again, from a few feet away, you will never see any of this. It's really more about getting the color and the texture in the room and not having to strip wallpaper later. Let's pull this down. Looks great. A little area where we've got a little bit of paint bleed. Again, in the big picture, that would never matter. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a baby wipe and I'm just going to detail that. Just wipe it. So you can correct it with a baby wipe, or you can touch it up with your base coat color, which I'll demo. And we use a little liner brush. We sell these at Cutting Edge Stencils, and you're going to reserve or have some of your base coat paint handy, and then you're just going to come in and just do a quick little touch up on any bleed. That's getting a little crazy, but if you have excessive bleed or you had a texture wall, it might be a solution for you. Okay, so I've got our base coat color, Navajo white. Take my liner brush, a little bit of paint. I always like to evenly distribute the paint on the brush. You could even thin that out a little bit if you'd like. This is called paleting the brush. Now I have my paint on here, and I'll come right into my little bleed area and just quickly and painlessly touch that up. It's really not necessary, but at the end of a project, what we tend to do is just do a quick look at the wall, and if there are some areas that bother you or your eye goes to these areas of bleed, just take the 15 minutes, run through the project, and just knock those areas back. Let me tell you, by the time you put your furniture back in the room, you're never going to see this 32nd of an inch bleed. In some cases, you may want to use spray adhesive. If I was doing a ceiling or an area where the stencil had potential to fall down, I would use a little bit of spray adhesive. You mist this on the back of your stencil in a well-ventilated area and let it dry for a couple of minutes. This way it'll prevent any of the adhesive from transferring to the wall, and it'll give you that little extra edge and help to hold the stencil in place. So instead of just having tape, you got a little spray adhesive around the whole piece. Really works quite well on the ceilings. If your stencil is sitting a little bit off the wall, your roller will push it flat. So it's that easy. Just follow those simple steps to get a great result like we got here today and reduce the amount of bleed on your next stencil project. Don't forget to stop in at cuttingedgestencils.com and check out the other great videos we have on how to stencil. Thanks a lot and have a great day.